So in terms of progress, I would say definitely the discourse reverberates more. So it's a lot louder.
Number one, women in leadership. I see that this has improved over the years.
We also have a lot of conversations going on about rights, about um, legislation, policy.
We have more women engineers, more women doctors, more younger women that are now beginning to take up spaces that used to just be male dominated in the past.
And in terms of improvement, I would say breaking down some of those barriers at the intersectionality of antiquated beliefs and norms and women's rights.
I would say generally we are not yet there. We need to continue to intensify the campaign on inclusiveness and gender equality.
Speak up where they can.
It's critical that they try to be a better listener.
I would say to be genuinely committed, okay? Emphasis on genuinely.
It will go a long way if our male colleagues encourage and support new initiatives and ideas that are tabled by our female associates.
Fostering mentorship and sponsorship opportunities for women and promoting policies that support work-life balance can contribute to creating a more inclusive workplace environment.
Personally, people should try to attend inclusive trainings to develop themselves and increase their knowledge about inclusivity.
By mentoring, mentorship goes a long way in making the girl child knows, okay, these are the possible challenges, okay, this is how it's possible to overcome and all that.
I would say by being open and being receptive to the idea of inclusivity and equality.
I think individuals, I think all of us who in spaces, whatever capacities that we have, can be very deliberate about just ensuring that women are able to thrive.
Actively promoting women's voices and achievements and supporting policies that promote equality in education, employment, and leadership.
For women as well, for those who are grown, through the system, they should hold the door open for more women to come through.
I would love to see laws that support women, laws that empower women in the workplace.
Spaces where women have access to the same economic opportunities, access to the same advantages that men enjoy.
I also want elimination of sexual harassment and violence in workplace.
In a world where we see more female voices being represented across different fields, including positions of power.
Realistically, is for us to have moved the needle significantly in terms of women's rights and gender equality.
I hope to see systematic changes that ensure equal pay and opportunities for women.
Treat me as a human first, not just a woman. Okay, so it's not just about women's rights, it's about my rights as a human. So perhaps we can start it from that point. Happy International Women's Day!
Happy International Women's Day.
And happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
of progress, I would say definitely the discourse reverberates more, so it's a lot louder.
Number one, women in leadership. I see that this has improved over the years.
We also have a lot of conversations going on about rights, about legislation, policy.
We have more women engineers, more women doctors, more younger women that are now beginning to take up spaces that used to just be male dominated in the past.
And in terms of improvement, I would say breaking down some of those barriers at the intersectionality of antiquated beliefs and norms and women's rights.
I would say generally we are not yet there. We need to continue to intensify the campaign on inclusiveness and gender equality.
Speak up where they can.
It's critical that they try to be a better listener.
I would say to be genuinely committed, okay? Emphasis on genuinely.
It will go a long way if our male colleagues encourage and support new initiatives and ideas that are tabled by our female associates.
Fostering mentorship and sponsorship opportunities for women and promoting policies that support work-life balance can contribute to creating a more inclusive workplace environment.
Personally, people should try to attend inclusive trainings to develop themselves and increase their knowledge about inclusivity.
By mentoring, mentorship goes a long way in making the girl child knows, okay, these are the possible challenges, okay, this is how it's possible to be overcome and all that.
I would say by being open and being receptive to the idea of inclusivity.
Individuals, I think all of us really spaces and capacities that we have can be very deliberate about just ensuring that women are able to thrive.
Actively promoting women's voices and achievements and supporting policies that promote equality in education, employment, and leadership.
For women as well, for those who have grown through the system, they should hold the door open for more women to come through.
I would love to see laws that support women, laws that empower women in the workplace.
Spaces where women have access to the same economic opportunities, access to the same advantages that men enjoy.
I also want elimination of sexual harassment and violence in the workplace.
In a world where we see more female voices being represented across different fields, including positions of power.
Realistically, is for us to have moved the needle significantly in terms of women's rights and gender equality.
I hope to see systematic changes that ensure equal pay and opportunities for women.
Treat me as a human first, not just a woman, okay? So it's not just about women's rights, it's about my rights as a human. So perhaps we can start it from that point. Happy International Women's Day!
Happy International Women's Day.
And happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
So in terms of progress, I would say definitely the discourse reverberates more. So it's a lot louder.
Number one, women in leadership. I see that this has improved over the years.
We also have a lot of conversations going on about rights, about um,
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning. You're welcome to our annual Women in TGI webinar series. My name is Ebose Aziba, for those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting. Our Women in TGI series seeks to provide, for those who don't know, it seeks to provide an accessible platform for awareness creation, for capacity and community building, for networking, of course, specifically regarding the challenges and opportunities for women in our business by addressing unconscious bias and its impact on our careers as women, by inspiring women to pursue leadership roles that appear far-reaching, and of course, to foster a supportive environment for women professionals. So today, we've gathered to speak about breaking barriers and how unleashing women's potentials at the workplace is fundamental to the growth of any successful business. So this webinar is all about celebrating our collective strength as women professionals and addressing challenges on building a future where every woman's voice is heard and every ambition a possibility. Once again, good morning and thank you for joining us. And to those who are watching us live on YouTube, thank you for being a part of this. In a short while, we would listen to an address from our special guest, who I would introduce very shortly, a woman who is paving the way for other women professionals, and also get an opportunity to listen to different views from a panel of speakers. But first, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of all women present, all female staff of TGI Group, of course, our male colleagues and our leadership team. So at this juncture, I'd like to invite our Group Human Resources Director, Non-Agri Business, Onome Agomati, to tell us a bit more about why we're gathered this morning. Good morning, Onome. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hello, Ebosa. Thank you for that introduction and the overview of women in TGI. And hello to everyone else on the call as well. My name is Onome Agomate, and I'm the founder and the chair of Women in TGI, a gender diversity project that was started 3 years ago with the overwhelming support of our executive management team, some of whom are on the advisory board, which the committee actually reports to. So it's a project, as Ebose mentioned, it's a project that's tasked with cultivating an inclusive culture where everyone can thrive and ensuring a healthy gender balance within the organization. We've worked towards achieving this by setting organizational goals across 5 focus areas that include attraction, selection, development, representation, and retention. So we've also put in initiatives that support these goals, as well as metrics. We have metrics in place to be able to measure the impact of the project as well. So we're constantly analyzing data. Thank you to our data analytics team to look for patterns and whatever story that this data is telling us about exits, about performance, about demographics, feedback from surveys as well. So we've grown leaps and bounds since inception of the project, and this would not have been possible without the amazing work and commitment of our team, which consists of committee members and change champions, and of course the CEOs of our subsidiaries. So I say a big thank you to all of them for staying the course and being catalysts for change in the organization. So that's my PSA announcement about women in TGI. So on to the business of the day. The World Economic Forum says that we are actually a century away from closing the gender gap, the economic gender gap globally. So I mean, even if you look at like the AI sector, for example, the gender gap is even more pronounced than other areas of the workforce with very dismal female representation. So as women, we have so many barriers. There's the digital barrier, as I just mentioned. There's the cultural barriers. There are psychological barriers. And of course, there are professional barriers as well. So yes, we've talked about this subject over and over again, but I believe it's this active discourse that keeps the gaping disparity front and center of the corporate agenda. So through advocacy, through creating awareness, having constant dialogue, and following up with action, that's how change actually happens. Oh, I saw yet another staggering statistic that said that men are more, that men are 50% more likely to have a mentor or a sponsor at work. So as women in a predominantly male-dominated workforce, as most of us are, who sponsors me, who advocates for me in those, in those closed-door sessions. So the purpose of the webinar today, again, is to continue the discourse on how we can break some of these barriers, how we can change institutional bias, and how we can partner with male allies to put women's empowerment, women's development, women's advancement front and center to unleash the full potential that we bring to the workplace. This is not only beneficial to women, but it benefits the organization as well. So to our audience, thank you for joining. Some of you, internally, some of you are externally, different time zones. So thank you for taking the time out to join us. Thank you to our keynote speaker, Mrs. Aisha Remy, for the compliment inferred by accepting our invitation to be with us today. And thank you to our amazing panelists, Dr. Glory, Ms. Shion, Johannes, Jonas, and Yosala as well. We're grateful to have you here today. So Ebose, thank you, and back to you.
So you're muted. So
My apologies for that. I was just saying thank you, Anna, for shedding a little more light on why we're gathered today. I know that a century may seem like a long time, but at least we're making baby steps. We're making some kind of progress towards it. We just might bridge that gap, in a few decades.
Sooner.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, so moving along, our vice chairman, Mr. Farrell Gumel, was supposed to be joining us on this call, but is regrettably unable to join us today, and has asked our Corporate Affairs Director, Mr. Sadiq Kasim, to deliver his opening remarks on his behalf. Good morning, Mr. Sadiq, and thank you for joining us. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much, and good morning, our compatriots and partners and allies and all the others, and especially the executive members of TGI here present. Like was said, Alhaji Farouk is unavoidably absent, and he has asked me to give an opening remark. First of all, I would like to thank also Hajia Aisha Rimi, the Executive Secretary of the NIPC, for accepting to be our keynote speaker today. So I'll read an address. It's a privilege to be here today representing the Executive Vice Chairman, Alhaji Farouk Gumel, to discuss an issue that is so critical to achieving true equity in the workplace, breaking the glass ceiling and empowering women to unleash their full potential. Throughout history, women have had to navigate systemic barriers to reach leadership positions. While strides have been made, the journey is far from being over. And like Onome said, according to the statistics, there is a century gap to be overcome. Today, we have stories of trailblazing women who have shattered those ceilings and paved the way for others. Closer home at TGI, I'm sure we have also set the pace, and this is agreeable and acknowledged even on this forum. If I start from the corporate office in Abuja, the annex of the corporate office in Abuja, it is the women who run the office and they run the show. If we look at it, Oge, the two Habibas, the Rafia two, and then FG and myself are only just people who fill the space rather than doing any much tangible thing. That's something to acknowledge. So when FG and myself are not around in the office, you never see any or notice any difference. We have Rafiat one in the corporate office in Lagos handling corporate comms, Onome here, and Namaka handling the HR front, Omo Umi looking at legal, Usoro, HR, Yusola, corporate sustainability, Latifat in IT, and many more. I may not even be able to mention all of them, but these are women, they are mothers, they are sisters, they are wives, they are daughters, and of course, they are bosses. They are our ambassadors and our gladiators when it comes to this. So we present them proudly to the public. Our keynote speaker, also, as you will soon learn, is one of them. I was on with her a few months ago on a visit to some of our facilities in Kebbi and Shagamu. Many of us here would confirm her passion, her energy, and definitely her eloquence, which you will come to hear when she speaks. Very remarkable was her identification of this very forum, Women in TGI. I'm sure Rafiat would have pictures to prove that. Yesterday also, I was with her in Mina, and we were going around some agricultural activities. She was leading a federal government delegation with some foreign investors, and she saw female tractor drivers. And as is her passion, she quickly rallied them around for a photo session and some pep talk, which we would also hear today. These stories are not just about individual success, they are about systemic change. Each of these women trailblazers faced immense challenges from gender bias to societal expectations. Yet they persevered, not only breaking barriers for themselves, but also making it easier for others to follow. As a male ally, I believe it's our collective responsibility to create spaces where women feel empowered, supported, and valued. This includes mentoring, advocating for equal pay, challenging stereotypes, and fostering environments where everyone, regardless of gender, can thrive. To the men who are here in this room, we have a role to play. Breaking glass ceilings isn't just a women's issue, it's a societal one. When women succeed, organizations flourish, communities grow stronger, and the world becomes a better place. In closing, I leave you with a challenge. What will you do to support the next woman in her journey to leadership? Let's not just talk about breaking barriers, let's commit to dismantling them entirely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sadiq. Thank you very much. And please extend our appreciation to our Executive Vice Chairman. Thank you, sir. So earlier I had mentioned that we have a very special guest in our midst who will be delivering the keynote address. Our special guest has served as the Executive Secretary and CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, NIPC, since October 2023. In this role, she leads the Commission's efforts to attract and facilitate domestic and international investments across various sectors, positioning Nigeria as a prime destination for global investors. Under her leadership, NIPC has focused on creating a more competitive investment environment and strengthening Nigeria's global appeal to investors. With over 30 years of experience in legal advisory, regulatory compliance, and investment facilitation, our guest brings expertise and strategic insights to her position. Her leadership is defined by a commitment to developing a transparent and investor-friendly regulatory framework. Prior to her appointment at NIPC, she was the managing partner at Africa Law Practice NG & Co., where she specialized in corporate commercial law, infrastructure development, and government compliance. her advisory roles with international organizations and multinationals have contributed to our high-level diplomatic negotiations and policy advocacy, driving legislative reforms that promote a more conducive investment climate in Nigeria. Our guest tenure at NIPC has been marked by a focus on operational excellence and digital innovation. She has championed key initiatives such as the Single Window Investment Platform, aimed at streamlining investment processes and minimizing bureaucratic delays for investors. Her forward-thinking approach has significantly enhanced NIPC's efficiency and service delivery to investors. A graduate of law with postgraduate qualifications in organizational leadership, our guest is widely respected for her ability to lead strategic reforms, build partnerships, and promote sustainable investments. Dear colleagues, please join me in welcoming Ms. Aisha Rimi. Good morning, Ma, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
Can you see and hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Well, this is it. Okay, my camera needed to be disabled. So
Okay,
good morning,
now
and I
we can see you.
apologize for the angle. I'm not sure how well it's sitting, but I'm in an office somewhere in Ibadan that's not mine. I'm on this mission, this tour, going around with these investors that Mr. Sadiq talked about. So I've been trying to position my device so that you can see me. Can you see me now?
Yes, it's good enough.
It's perfect.
Is it good enough? Oh, okay. I'll try not to shift it. Thank you. So good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. I'm actually in the process of recovering from imposter syndrome, because when they're talking about me, I'm like, is that the same person? I'm actually not, I don't recognize myself. So, but thank you very much, Onome, Ebose, and of course, one of our biggest he for she's, Mr. Sadiq Kasim. Thank you so much. So, my name is Aisha Rimi, as you've been told. I'm the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. In some other places, I've been labeled the Chief Marketing Officer for Nigeria. So make of that what you will. I was going to approach this today with slides and stuff, but I thought that was probably a little impersonal. And I think in a forum such as this, it's better to be as interactive as possible. And one of the things that I learned in this organizational leadership course, which I took a couple of years ago, and trust me, if anybody has done adult education, you don't want to go there. It was a hellish experience, fun and very useful, but combining that with full-time work and going to classes and having to write exams again after 30 plus years was a huge challenge. But one of the things I learned about leadership and discussions such as this is to share personal stories, because I think you can then identify better with people, and they connect with you better, and they actually listen to you. So rather than have slides, I may refer to the slides for some data and statistics, but rather than that, I'll share personal stories. So first of all, I think if we start with the topic of unconscious bias, I mean, what is it? Unconscious. So we know the conscious ones. People just look and say, this is a woman, they're conscious biases that we face, especially as women. But they're the unconscious ones, which are very subtle, and they're almost instinctive. And to imagine that this happens just from one gender to the other is actually wrong. It happens even by and amongst ourselves. So we too are we are guilty, maybe not as much, but we are also guilty of it. So what is it? In some places you call it stereotyping, in some places you call it profiling, and all of that. And it can come from many different aspects: religion, culture, tribe, color, even physical and non-physical disabilities or handicaps. So there are many different biases that we face generally, but certainly I think we would be not charitable if we didn't say that women generally tend to face biases a lot more than men. So let me start with some of my journey and my history and the stuff that I've done and the biases that I've faced. And I'm sure when I go through this over my 30 plus year career, almost everyone on this platform can probably identify with one story or the other. So I studied law, I came back, and and I was very excited about in our days there was a program called LA Law. I think a more recent version of it would be Suits. So I had all these grand ideas of what law would look like, and I would go to court, and first of all, the judges, who were almost predominantly male, would look at me and just say, "This small girl," and literally they would just shout me down, not listen. I would spend hours, sometimes not sleeping, preparing for court and things. And I would get there and just not be able to present my case. So in the first 2 minutes, they would rattle me and I would be totally confused. As a result, I now have a phobia. I don't go to court anymore. I can't do it. And for a long time, I didn't even like public speaking because I was so convinced that I was just not doing the right thing or saying the right thing. So yes, I see a face there. Somebody's put up an emoji. It traumatized me. But what was it? It was just, as far as they were concerned, here's a young female. She can't know what she's talking about, regardless of the fact that I was usually better prepared than the other side. So that was external. Internally in the office, I was one of the few females, and I was probably the youngest for a while. And I got married, and I was going to have a baby, and that's when the HR realized they didn't even have a maternity policy, maternity provision in their. Yes, exactly. On a mess. So there was this whole debate about how much time I could take off and what I was allowed to take off, and all of this and all of that. We went back and forth. In the end, I think I got 12 weeks with full pay, then 1 more month with half pay. Then if I was going to take another month off, it was going to be at no pay. So this was all like 4 months in total. Anyway, we battled that, and I was able to to get through. I think I got 4 months in the end. And we would go into meetings, and I'd be sitting there again, very prepared and stuff. And my boss would look at me and say, "We need some tea." So, in fact, my male colleagues came up with a name for me called Executive Meshai. And for those who don't understand Hausa, Meshai is a tea maker, and it's usually associated with people up north. And because I'm northern, so they started calling me Executive Meshai. I would have things like if the men had to do like school runs or whatever, I would be the designated driver. They would pick up their kids. I would have to babysit the kids. So, I mean, there's nothing I didn't see. And I used to take it personally until one day I just said to myself, I said, you know what? If these people are going to treat me like this and not recognize me for who I am, I'm going to do what I need to do, which is I will do the barest minimum. I will come in, I will do the work that I need to do. But, and I mean, we're talking early 90s. But since I inevitably had quite a bit of time on my hands now, I would just start a side hustle. So I did. And, you know, and they would look at me and say, how are you able to afford those shoes? We don't pay you enough. And I'd be like, well, you know, maybe my daddy helped me or whatever. But really, I literally made lemonade with those lemons that were thrown at me. So moving forward, I got to a point in my career where it was clear that I needed to be promoted. And don't forget, I went in as a youth corper, and I now got to a point where I had seen them make some men partners and things like that. So I was almost 10 years down the road, right? And I was like, okay, so are we talking about partnership? And they thought it was hilarious that I could even consider thinking about partnership in this firm. So I said, okay, well, after 9 years, it's clear this is not going anywhere. And I knew how much value I brought to the firm. So I literally just handed in my resignation, packed up and left, and all hell broke loose. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't believe it. And they realized how much they actually needed me. So after a week of me just resigning, I was called back in, offered partnership, And even though it wasn't the kind of full partnership that I wanted, but I got it anyway. But the truth is, I didn't kick up a fuss. I didn't raise hell. I tried to have conversations that went ignored. And so I did the next best thing, which was to quit. So I'm not saying everybody has that kind of bargaining power, but I will come back to the point I'm trying to make here, which is about not being emotional. Just get practical and get real. So after that, I got an opportunity to go and work in the States at a New York firm. And I faced all manners of biases. First of all, this was a 300 to 500 lawyer strong firm. There were only 3 people of color. 2 were actually mixed race. And I was the only fully black woman. What was interesting about the firm, renowned international firm, whatever, what was really interesting about the firm was that all the black women were secretaries. So I would meet people in the corridors and stuff, and their immediate assumption was that I was a secretary. And that was in New York. So we think that this actually applies only here locally, but or on the continent, or in developing countries, but it's global. And if you look at the statistics, you'll find that even in Europe, women are only making up about 19, somewhere between 19, certainly less than 30% of C-suite positions and board positions and things like that. We've seen what happened in America recently, where in spite of all his known challenges and issues, a country as supposedly developed as the US voted for X versus Y. So we know that these biases cut across many different continents and countries. It's just something that really has, over time, in some places, they've been able to sort of finesse it and gloss over it and make it look as inclusive as possible. But in reality, it's still very, very much in existence, and it's in existence around the world. Some countries have enacted laws which make it mandatory. We have here policies that say 35% of government positions and whatever should go to women. I think the cabinet is just about struggling to meet that. But certainly if you look at government agencies, there's very few. I think there's probably about 20, if that, of us out of about 400 odd agencies. If you look at our National Assembly, there are only 3 female senators. It's really quite challenging. But then again, they're good stories. If you look at places which are traditional, like Tanzania, like Namibia now, they recently elected female presidents. So it's happening. It's not, the truth of the matter is it's not going to happen. And when I hear a whole century away, that's quite disheartening. I would like to say that since I've been working, which is about now 34 odd years, I've seen a huge improvement. I think the banking industry in Nigeria has done really, really well as far as female representation is concerned. But the truth of the matter is that nobody's going to do this for us if we don't do it. I remember talking to an elder statesman, and he said to me, and I was complaining about the female thing, and he said, look, when we were growing up, we had people who sat in offices and would not leave. He said, I was in my 30s when I was made an ambassador. He said, nobody's going to give this thing to you if you don't seize it yourself. You literally have to break barriers, push the doors down, assert yourselves, and just never shy away from asking for what you want and demanding for it. And the truth is, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I realized that for a lot of people, it's very convenient to say, well, I never knew she was interested. I didn't know she was even capable, because we go in and instinctively we tend to shy away. We tend to not speak up. Because we don't want to rock the boat. So in all of this, what do? We have to be professional. We have to hold ourselves out as being capable. There's also an expectation that we're going to be very, very emotional about things. So we have to learn to be assertive, be confident, and and literally grab that a seat at the table. So when I then came back from the States and I sort of tried to dabble in and around the political arena at the time, and I was supporting a campaign and I was running the office, and I did all of that, and they all commended the good work that I did, and then decided when it was time to give appointments that it's okay, Aisha, it's okay, you just wait a little bit, just wait a little bit. Again, so I walked out on them. And I went off, and I'll just sort of fast forward. I set up my own boutique practice, which then I merged with 3 other partners, and we created this law firm that was referred to, which is Africa Law Practice. And I joined this firm with a very clear idea of what I was going to do. I was going to empower women, it wasn't just about law and building a firm and all of that. It was also about empowering women. So from the get-go, like they said, I was managing partner. I was very clear about our hiring process. Women were going to make up at least 50% of this new firm, and we succeeded. In fact, at some point, I think we had 60%, and certainly in the admin cadre, it was almost predominant. I mean, I think that was about 80% women. The menial jobs, cleaning and stuff, messengers, clerks, those we left to men. But certainly the professionals, it was about 60% women. And I think now it's probably dropped to about 50, 55, but it was certainly predominantly women. And what did we do? I think Onome talked about retention. First of all, the hiring, of course, very important. It was not just going to be this, we will take you just because you're a woman. It was merit-based. And we found that there were a lot of capable women out there. But then retention was also very important, because when you're in that stage of your life and your career, you're in your 20s, early 20s to 30s, people are getting married, people are trying to have children. So we didn't want to lose them. So I promoted and pushed for a creche. So we set up a creche so that these young women could bring their kids to work. The creche was right next door, and they would feel comfortable. They could go and nurse, and if they needed to even bring the babies into the office, they could go into a quiet room and nurse and feed and things like that. We've even had people with fertility issues, which we then gave them grants and soft loans, because life has changed. Fertility is an issue, more and more of an issue. It's happening at a younger age. And once we realized that that was a problem, we started to deal with it. So we encouraged them to speak up, and we supported them. Then there's the issue of promotions, and of course, some of the men would say, she's going on maternity leave. She's due for promotion when she comes back. I'm like, no, if she's due for promotion, she's going to get it regardless of whether or not she's on maternity leave. And maternity leave, by the way, is full pay. Bonuses, allowances, everything, full pay. Because I know what I went through, so I've made sure that we've done that. And so our retention policy is very strong, and our rates are quite high. So what do we do? Sorry, I scribbled some notes. As Mr. Kasim will tell you, we've been on the road for the last 2 days, traipsing the country, Kebbi, Minna, and he'll tell you that we saw female tractor drivers. I tried to share the picture. I don't know if you guys saw it at some point when he was speaking. I did try and share it. Okay, great. So, and so people will use any excuse to profile certainly others. But I speak as a Muslim woman. There's absolutely nothing in Islam that precludes women from being professionals. Naturally, and I don't know, Onome, if you mentioned physical barriers. You talked about digital, psychological, cultural. I'm not sure you mentioned physical. So there's some things that by their very nature we are physically unable to do, and that's fine. But then again, for men as well, there are things that they're physically unable to do that we as women can do. So when people try and use religion, it's nonsense. When they've now infused the religion into culture, or the culture into religion, I'm not quite sure which way, but they try and make you feel that when you're doing stuff, it's almost blasphemous, and it's wrong. If you bother to read the Quran for yourself, and I know the Bible is just as progressive as far as women are concerned. There's absolutely nothing that stops us. So last week, I'll tell you a very funny story. A few days ago, I went with the vice president to Kano to the commissioning of a factory. First of all, I was the only woman on the entourage. So we land in Kano. It's all men. It's a Friday. They put us in a coaster bus with the VP and everything. A coaster bus, I think, takes like 32 people or whatever. I'm the only woman, and I look left and I look right. VP says, Aisha, ladies first. Even the security were like, oh, okay. So they stood back. So I got on the bus and I said, gentlemen, salam alaikum. I'm the only woman here, so I'm going to choose where I sit. So please allow me. You know, without being offensive and just actually almost trivializing it, but making them realize how important it is, first of all, to acknowledge that there is a woman in this entourage and that I do have a role to play. We got to the factory and they literally, and I'm there because it's a factory, it's industry, it's investment promotion and retention. And they tried to push me out of the way. The VP looks left and looks right. He goes, where's Aisha? I said, I'm here, sir. He said, come and stand by me. And he looked at them and he said, do you think I brought her here just to escort me? She's the head of the investment promotion. And that is why we're here today. This is her forte and she must stand here. So we need champions like that. We need champions who actually advocate for us and on our behalf. And that was, and it set the tone for the rest of the day. So we should hail our VP for being a female champion and a he for she. So those are some of the examples and issues that I've had to face. But then, you know, how have I dealt with them? I dealt with them by, apart from being traumatized and not going to court anymore. But then again, I was in my 20s. I think I've outgrown that now. But really, it's about, I've talked about being professional, being absolutely professional, being prepared. Just always be prepared. If you go to a meeting, don't assume that you will not speak or don't assume that they're not going to listen to you. Just make sure you are prepared. Don't be emotional. It's very hard. Even if you're going to go and lock yourself in the toilet and cry afterwards or whatever, just don't be emotional about it. Be very practical, be very controlled and composed, and they will poke and they will prod and they will provoke. But the trick is just to stand your ground. And something which we really should learn to do is to speak out. We should call it out when we see it, not in an antagonistic way. And not, you know, when I met one of my bosses last year or 2 years ago when he turned 70, and we started to talk, and he said, oh, but I never realized you felt like that. I said, Oga, it was very hard. But now that I look back, you yourself, you were just in your late 30s. But in my head, you were this grown man, this big man that I was afraid to talk to. And when you look today at a 37, 38-year-old, you realize that they have some issues that they're dealing with. They deal with insecurities themselves. They deal with, men have things that they are not able to express as openly. So it can manifest itself in hostility or aggression or rudeness or whatever, you know. And so now that we're friends and we can talk about it and look back, and I look and I think, my goodness, he himself was actually quite young and naive and probably didn't even know how to handle the situation himself. So you make those allowances, you contextualize, you try and sort of think, okay, if this was reversed, what would I be doing? But then, so you try and understand it, and then you try and deal with it from that basis, from that point of view. I can say that, excuse me, it's incredible, because to people who are in their 30s now and 40s, and they're looking and they're saying, really, but I can honestly tell you, we have come such a long way. There's so much that has happened. The improvements are just huge. And this, of course, judging it from where we're coming from. So, but of course, there's still a long way to go, and there's still so much more that we can do. And so, but one of the things that we really need to do as women is we need to support each other. You will always hear that when men will tell you, but when we were talking about you or considering you, it was your fellow woman who dissented. It was this woman who said, no, don't consider her or whatever. We have a habit of pulling each other down, consciously or unconsciously, but we do it. And the men capitalize on it. And they will come and they will try and instigate us, and they will try and, put us against each other, and we almost always fall for it. So we must be very careful of those minefields that they lay. Just a few days ago, one lady said we need to come together as a collection or a group of female heads of agencies, of government agencies, because if we don't support each other, the group only has like 17. Like I said, there's about 400 government agencies, federal agencies, but there's only, so far the group has only 17. If we don't support each other, these men will take the jobs from us. So we have to show them that we are a united front. And that's what I would encourage. We really must support each other. And then, of course, to the men, I will just say, to our he for she's, please, please, please never make a decision without a woman at the table. Honestly, a decision made without a woman at the table is more than likely to suffer some pitfalls. To the women, I think I'll just close, and I'm not sure how much time I've used up, but I will just close by saying, don't think about what if. Let's deal with what is. This is the reality. We're going to face it head on. We're going to support each other. We're going to set up support groups if need be. We will have mentors. I think we need to have a mentorship program. I don't know if TGI does it, but I know that the women that I've met in TGI are all fantastic women. They've all done so well. I must commend TGI for its support for women. When we went to Argungu, they made sure they pulled out all the women for me to see them, and we did a group photo. I think Rafiat has a photo somewhere. Yes, so thank you, TGI, for all that you do for women. We don't take it lightly, and we definitely appreciate it. And to everyone here, thank you very much for listening. I will make my email, my phone number available. If anybody thinks that what I've said is worth following up on, I'm available for questions and further discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm looking forward to, I'd like to take you up on that offer, if that's okay. Thank you so much for sharing some of your experiences, which I totally found relatable. But I'm happy to say that at TGI Group, we're making progress on that front and breaking the bias with a few more women actually advancing to more leadership positions. And three key things that I really found insightful from your remarks was the fact that, you sort of encouraged us to not be emotional, to learn to speak out when the opportunity presents itself, and to be prepared to share our opinions, to learn to support each other, and to make a more conscious effort not to pull other women down. For me, that was the key takeout from everything you said. So thank you very much, ma'am, for making our time again to join us. It was such a pleasure listening to you. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of some of the members of our leadership team who have taken our time to join us this morning. Our Group Managing Director, Mr. Raul Savara, is on the call. Our Executive Directors, Dr. Remy Oni, Mr. Jerome Chobon, Mr. Johannes Flosbach, our Director of Admin, I also noticed is on the call, Mr. Ita Ekpeyong, and all MDs and BU leadership teams that are present. Thank you so much for being a part of this this morning. Before we move on, real quick, I just wanted to mention that if you have any questions or comments regarding everything that we've heard this morning, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. Right after the next item on the agenda, we would have some time for Q&A, so please feel free to go ahead and drop your questions in the chat box. Now, next on our agenda is a panel discussion, which I had referred to earlier when we started off this morning. This panel will explore the theme of breaking the glass ceilings, which I will now hand over to the moderator, our Head of Strategic Partnerships at TGI Group, Habiba Suleiman.
Sorry, I've muted. Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Augusta. And thank you so much to our keynote speaker. I was just clapping and nodding, here. We're so excited and so thankful to have you share all of those experiences with us. And now, so I think just to start, Maya Angelou had sometimes said, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better, right? And so really, there's no excuse for us to not do better because there's so much that we're learning every day and learning from people like, the keynote speaker that we must start to put into practice. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce my panelists. I think their bios will come off the screen now.
Habiba, sorry, real quick before we go into that, I can see that Miss Aisha has her hands up. I guess she has a few comments before we let her go.
Okay.
Thank you. That was my next question. Am I required to be on the panel, or may I be excused? Because I'm actually sitting in Premier Feed Mills in Ibadan, and I've got a whole delegation that I need to get back to. So do I have your permission to be excused?
Yes, ma, because we're actually expecting you in kilometer 51. So yes, we're happy to let you go so that you can come to us.
To the TGI, exactly. Great. Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the day. And as we say in Abuja, fruitful discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Yeah, Habiba, go on.
Yeah, go ahead. Awesome. So I've got with me today Ms. Sheun Oni, who is an experienced business executive and an independent non-executive director. She served on the board of Better Glass Nigeria PLC, is still serving on the board of Continental Reinsurance, is a non-executive director, Pickwick Nigeria, and the group managing director currently of Leventis Nigeria Limited. She's a business and financial management executive with over 32 years professional experience across business advisory, financial strategies, multinational organizations, business leadership, and board participation across multiple sectors. And in recognition of her experience, she's got several awards. Yeah, we can go to Yosola now, because obviously we'll speak about this. The next is fine. Next slide. Okay. And then I've also got Miss Dr. Glory Edozian, who is an internationally acclaimed expert in women's leadership development. She's trained over 500 female executives, empowering them to secure board appointments, executive promotions, speaking engagements. She's a LinkedIn top voice for women in Africa, and she specializes in equipping women with the tools to position themselves for high impact leadership roles through personal branding and strategic visibility. She's a member of the Forbes Coaches Council and a frequent contributor to international conversations on women leadership, and also is a visionary leader behind the Ascent Club, a digital academy dedicated to helping C-suite and board-ready executive women achieve international relevance and recognition. Next panelist. I've also got Yosola, who is our head of corporate responsibility and sustainability, bringing over a decade of experience in industries ranging from FMCGs and agribusiness to development, legal, and the power sector. Yosola works with thousands of smallholder farmers across rural communities and is committed to promoting sustainable sourcing, ensuring farm-to-customer traceability, and securing a sustainable future for the communities her projects directly impact. Next panelist. I've also got Dr. Johannes, who is the Executive Director at Comet Nigeria Limited and She Farms. He has got a PhD in banking and finance from the University of Beirut. He's currently supporting operations for these companies across Lagos, Nigeria, and has got over 20,000 employees, that he manages across these business areas. Next panelist. I think I've got, is that all? Okay, good. So we move on. I've got Jonas. I think his bio was not projected, but we go ahead. And just to start, thank you very much. Is everybody on here? I can only see Yosola and Johanna spotlighted. Hi, Johannes. Okay, I see Jonas. Hi, Dr. Edosian, are you here? And Ms. Shewan, very good to have you here today. Welcome, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us. And I'm going to start with you. You know, Ms. Shewan, you've worked for an entire 18 years within the Coca-Cola system, right? And this is a long time. This is almost 2 decades. And I think I would really want to know, because obviously the prior speaker, as you've heard, spoke so much about unconscious bias from even women, right? And it requires a lot for you to have that long, you know, span of a career within an organization. What do you think allowed for that to happen? What do you think was in that environment that made it comfortable enough for you to stay for 18 years?
Thank you very much. And first, good morning to everyone. I hope my voice is carrying out through. And thank you to the whole team for extending this platform to me and inviting me. You know, when you said entire, you know, I had to kind of like, you know, look at myself again and say, sweetheart, you're still young. So it's you know, hindsight is always the best sight. You look back and then you really can connect the dots. It definitely didn't look like 18 years, and you know, it's a journey of growth, and listening into Miss Aisha Rimi, and you know, in some ways I could connect, in some ways I could, you know, some things resonated. But I believe it's also, I have to really give credence through grace to how my journey started. I started my career with Pricewaterhouse, now Coopers, then it was Pricewaterhouse. And, you know, like every consulting firm, audit firm, the focus is thought leadership. It's really about what you bring to the table. So my formative years were really quickly connected into, you know, developing what you would call your foundational skill. You know, what do you bring to the table? What's your hip pocket? I think Indra Nui referred to it as, what's your hip pocket skill? What do you want to be known for? So those formative years, I really have to be grateful. 7.5, 8 years at Pricewaterhouse really created a platform. And one of the things I would also like to leave and encourage people to do, I did say hindsight is the best side. Try to chart your career journey, almost like a ladder. Like, you know, I have something like this. It may not be visible. It just takes you through what was that foundation, what have been the building blocks, and being able to look back and say, what did I gain? So my first 8 years were really about building a foundation. You know, I refer to it as, you know, it was a journey of you know, developing fundamental skills. You know, it was a journey of defining what did I want life to be for me. Then I moved to this 18 years that you talked about, the Coca-Cola system, 14 years on the company side, 4 years on the bottling side. And, you know, as an organization, a big organization, you know, it creates opportunities for growth. So 18 years didn't look like, you know, 18 years either stuck in a role. It looked like 18 years that was opening up different opportunities. Were there some I raised my hand for? Yes. Were there some that, you know, I was quiet? But in those years when you come to the table, you know, people actually are watching. And if there's something that I take back and look back in my career, is recognizing that as you bring yourself, you know, into your role, people actually are watching. I did different roles. For example, I started off in, you know, finance, budget and planning. I moved on to controlling. At some point, I was the executive assistant to the business unit president. At that time, Nigeria was a business unit president. You know, and all these were opening up opportunities for me. Did I face unconscious bias? Yes. And I would probably refer to them more as unconscious. I always refer to something on a very light note. Throughout my career, and even up till the recent journey I did to Dubai just a month ago, I would get into the hotel room for a meeting and the welcome pack I kid you not, we'll have Mr. Sheung Oni. You know, it was okay in Nigeria. I would think, oh, maybe because my name is unisex, people think they're expecting to see a man. Then I would go for meetings in Atlanta, Coca-Cola Company. I get into the hotel room, I see Mr. Sheung Oni. And you wonder, okay, is it the unconscious bias of what who you think should be behind the role? But I think Aisha really called out a few things. You've got to learn to look through these things. You've got to learn to look through it. One of the things you hear a lot when we talk about women, stop being emotional. You know, I'm an emotional being, and I initially would make apologies for that. Then I told myself one day, what really does it mean to be emotional? You could look at ChatGPT. It's really what defines you as a human being. If you don't have emotions, you're dead. You're actually cold and dead. So I said, you know what, Sheung, reflect this comment. You're not an emotional being in that context of being negative. You're an emotional being because you're human. That emotional being is also what connects you to one of the values you got rewarded for, of being very passionate, right? You bring your whole being. So now you've got to define, what is it about the core and essence of being emotional that is positive, and reflect that. So that was one, almost like reflection that I had to tell myself, right? Now, are there times when you have to, again, connect to being self-aware and say, okay, what could be the downside or the derailers of being very emotional, right? How do you then pick on that and make sure you rein yourself in? But recognize that being emotional is actually what brings out the passion in you. It's what drives authenticity. It is what drives being empathic, which is critical as a leader, right? So that's one thing. I mean, maybe just to drop that in, that I believe that it's what drives you as a human being, right? So we don't need to apologize for that. We just need to recognize when it could be a derailer. The second key thing of an 18-year journey, right, is it's also where you build your proof points. That's where you build your own DNA, your brand, your ethos, right? So it may look like 18 years, but we all should have an opportunity in our career where we deepen our roots, right? It may not look like the best thing now, where people tend to be, look, you must be on the move to really, but you need a space in your career where you need to deepen your roots. And those 18 years allowed me, right? I built credibility around certain things, and this thing started showing up in different spaces in the future. My first board role came from a sponsor within the Coca-Cola company, or sorry, the bottling company. So my first board role, and the interesting thing when I look back at that point, maybe because I was so buried in career, my vision of being on the board was either connected to an executive role, or the fact that maybe your family interest and all that, you had interest in a company, and that therefore would just give you a seat on the table. I never even had the vision of being an independent, but there was a sponsor, right, who was connecting to things I had done in the company and said, okay, now you're leaving the system. We still don't want you to leave, but we're going to open this opportunity for you. I sat before the nominations committee, still went through the interviews, and that's how my board journey started. It's within this same 18 years that the next board role, right, when somebody was asked, we need a very strong female candidate on a board. And the person said, one person I remember, finance, CFO, Sheung. So I may not be, I hope it's resonating in a way where I'm saying time also allows for you to deepen certain things. Time allows for you to build a DNA and a brand for yourself. Time also allows for you in your leadership journey to open up to parts for, increasing areas of impact, right, where you can extend your range of impact. I'll also like to drop this point, my view on leadership. And I tell this to my team all the time. Leadership is really not about a position. It's not tied to a hierarchical position. Leadership is an evolution of yourself as a person. your ability to grow in, increasing spheres of influence and of impact. And the HR people will know so well, you start from leader of self to leader of others to leader of leaders. So being a leader, right, I don't want us to apologize for ourselves as, either because we're women, just learn to show up. Aisha touched on it as well. Learn to show up, learn to bring power to your voice. Sometimes we come to meetings, and I don't want to take too much of a time, so I'll just close. We may come into meetings and, like we're here in this discussion, right? And it's time for questions. And sometimes we just tend to go into ourselves, right? We don't want to, raise up our hand, have a point of view or express ourselves. And sometimes these are things that could hold you back, right? In that growth journey of being yourself, of being a leader in an organization. So yes, it is 18 years. So in closing, but I think 18 years that really afforded a lot of growth, allowed me build a profile for myself. And yes, there were unconscious biases, but I'm also grateful that there were people who saw through that brand, right, and made and sponsored me. But the most important thing was I brought myself in those 18 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michelle. I mean, and I think one thing to note is really about how when women are emotional, we say they are being too emotional, but men are they're actually passionate. We have a way of describing these things to make it look as if someone is wrong for actually being emotional about something. But thank you so much. And again, time is, time allows for range. And I think it's good for us to always realize that we shouldn't always be in a rush. If that environment allows for you to thrive and grow, take the opportunity, and use it well. Thank you so much. I'm going to come to you now, Johannes. So you are a business leader. You are also, a leader in your society, at your home, and wherever it is. The question then is, these glass ceilings that, we've heard about several times, and we've seen women having to deal with, what do you think is your role as a leader to ensure that these glass ceilings are broken? What are you doing to enable women in those spaces where you lead to thrive, and become the best version of themselves?
Yes, Habiba, thank you very much. And before I respond, let me just say one thing. I think you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about emotions. I don't think we have a lot of issues with women being emotional, but most of the issues in the day-to-day are with men being emotional. So maybe that should be one perception to look into to start with. But that aside, back to your question. So let me look at where we are today. Just to recap on the recent months. In the last 2 years, we lost 2 female employees. They lost their life due to postpartum issues. Until today, we have issues with young mothers not being able to find hygienic rooms to breast pump. They're still going to toilets to do so. Until today, our intake of young graduates has a much higher share of women than men, purely based on merit. But as they grow through the ranks, the ratio changes, and it's the men that stay and a lot of the women that are leaving. And to my best knowledge, also today, I don't think we have a female executive director yet in the entire group. So I think that shows us we still have a lot of work to do. I think we are certainly going into the right direction, but quite some work to do. So what can be done? I think that everything starts with having the awareness and being listening to the issues. How do we do that, or how do we try to do that? We introduced about 2.5 years ago is a concept of ombudspeople. So we have ombudspeople that are a listening ear, that are not HR, but that are open for issues that particularly also women are facing in the day-to-day. I think it has been a very, very good success so far. We're also doing twice a year focus group discussions with hundreds of employees, where we try as much as possible to understand what the issues are. So I think that's part one, to listen and to understand what the problems are. I think the second part is then we try to address them as much as possible. And here really my highest appreciation to TGI for the crash, which I think really sets the standard. But of course, the question will be, what do we do in other locations, in other places? We try to address this to some extent through our bi-monthly midwife talk. We have an internationally accredited midwife that invites all female employees on a bi-monthly basis to address matters of women's health, hygiene, and specifically around pregnancy, which has had a fantastic positive feedback. And then thirdly, I think it's a lot about flexibility in the sense of understanding that during pregnancy, that during certain life cycle events around marriages, around starting a household, that women need a certain degree of flexibility that we also have to cater to as a company. So I hope that these activities are at least contributing to making our whole company more attractive for women and also allowing more of our fantastic ladies to go through the ranks and to take senior leadership roles. Thank you, Habiba.
Thank you so much, Johannes, and really very much. I think we should appreciate you for really going about these very personal issues in such ways. I think it's about time that businesses started to realize that this is real life. It's not fancy anymore. People have to breastfeed their children, and they want to do work while they're at it. So why not create those environments and those spaces where life can coexist, where homes and work can coexist and people can do what they need to do without having to sacrifice one for another. So thank you really for all of these personal efforts and these deliberate efforts that you're putting in place to ensure that women in your organization can thrive and do what they need to do. I'm going to come to you now, Yosola. You do a lot of work with communities, right? A lot of these communities have rural, smallholder women as well. And I'm sure you've had specific experiences dealing with women that have had to manage sociocultural impediments. How have you been able to manage? What do you do when you go to communities and then you see that women are not allowed to easily engage or easily participate in economic activity? How do you manage these issues, bearing in mind that there are sociocultural factors in place you don't want to disrupt? How do you go about these delicate scenarios?
Thank you so much, Habiba. Thank you, everyone, for putting this together. So just now, my camera was on, and then the phone decides to, start to act up. So my apologies for that. I'm sure I'll figure it out in the course of me answering the question. So thank you very much for putting this together, everyone. I've been able to resonate with what everyone has said, especially Haja, Aisha, and Madam Sharon. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Your question, Habiba, is very specific, especially when you have to deal with, navigating deep-rooted social, cultural norms, and sometimes these, cultural norms can actually, act as a hindrance, hindering women's participation in how they can actually benefit from some of the economic activities that we're implementing across the different value chains, right? So to speak to your question, specifically, women are traditionally seen as caregivers, and most of the time, if not all of the time, they are actually excluded from decision-making processes that have to do with maybe finance, even land or training. And I will speak to some specifics. So some programs that we've had to implement, you would find that when you're, getting, a group of people together in the community, you would see mostly men, and we'll have to ask, so where are the women? The women have come to a place of acceptance that, oh, this is not for me. So we've had to speak to them specifically, right? Let me speak to issues of, even earning a wage, a living wage, so to speak. Some women with some social, cultural context in place see earning the same amount of wage for labor as the men see it as disrespectful. And we've had to come into conversations with communities, with, community heads, farmer leaders, to explain to them that this is not the case. The women are not going to disrespect you because of, the amount of money that you're both going to earn. Another way we've been able to tackle this is by leveraging on cooperative groups, savings associations, to let them know that every member of this cooperative group is entitled to the same, the same benefit. Now, these platforms, like these cooperative groups, have not only done this for us, but we've been able to leverage these platforms as a place to provide skill development for financial literacy for the women, and making sure that they're also beneficiaries to these kind of initiatives. Some other things that we've been able to do is make it easier for them to come and talk to us, make sure that we give them attention, and also create percentages for them in the programs. Most of our programs, we've been able to see 130% women participation, 20% women participate, make it easy for them for this. Yeah. One of the programs, making that okay, this some of that which are specific to you. It shows that we're able to marry the needs that you have as a family caregiver with the program, because these are things that the women will have to worry about traditionally, providing, care to the home, to the family. So the process isn't really straightforward, to be honest. You have to kind of work through each community as it comes and see how you're going to get that message across to everyone, understanding that it's a collective responsibility. Despite the constraints that we face, the consistent engagement is important, and you have to be culturally sensitive. You don't just go into a community and say, hey, power to the women. No, you have to have some, sensitivity in how you approach these situations, right? And also co-creating solutions. We've been able to co-create some solutions. Speaking to the leaders to say, okay, you know what works for you in this community, right? Making sure that you create a platform where their voices are heard. I'll give you another example before I close out, Habiba. We were able to construct some warehouses for the women, and one of the value chains that we did this for is not always in season, right? So what do we do when the value chains are not in season? And the women said, you know what, please, we want an opportunity where we're able to charge people for coming to store their products in this place so that we can actually get some income. And that was phenomenal. We were able to create a platform for them to say that, right? So they're able to, they have the key to the place, they have control, and they're able to determine the kind of economy that they want to flow out of that investment for themselves, right? So that's a classic example of how we've been able to support them. But it's a continuous journey, and we'll continue to do our best. Thank you so much, Habiba.
Thank you so much, Yosola. And just to borrow from what Ms. Shewan said about leadership in various spaces, I think we have to evolve beyond just leadership in our workspaces to even communities that we interface with. Whatever places and spaces where we find ourselves, it's important that we're deliberate about providing, leadership and enabling for women to thrive in those spaces as well. And I'm going to come to you lastly, Jonas. So you're the sales director at TGI District, and as we know, sales requires a lot of energy to meet ambitious targets, right? And so my question is, how do women on your team, especially those with other social roles, like childcare, for example, meet up to these expectations? And how do you think businesses can be deliberate about supporting women in sales? How do you think this can be done?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity first. So first of all, we are a sales and distribution company. And as you said, sales is the core of our operations. Again, every month we have something called as one number score, where we gauge people according to the working. So there are some metrics on that, and everything boils down to some kind of score, right? So we were reviewing last month, we did one of our best sales, and trust me, women folks were better than men. Okay, so they were 82.5% they scored versus men were somewhere around 80%. So if you think sales is a men-oriented job, no, we are all wrong. It is not like that. When the process is strong, as far as in TGI, we are very, very proud that our process is strong and sales is an outcome. So when we do the process right, and we have seen that discipline in women folk, that they are very, very, very focused, and they are also very process driven. So nothing to take away from that. So that's one part of the story. The next part of the story, what we can do differently. I'll give an example. It's my personal experience, not in this organization, in another organization where I was there before, there was a launch. There was a launch of a new product, and we were supposed to go to each and every town to launch that. So that was a 2 days event. It was. So the ASMs were supposed to go, and one of my ASMs who was in Suleja, she was supposed to go to Mina to do a 2 days program. And fortunately or unfortunately, she was a new mom. She had a twin baby. Both of them were girl baby, and they were hardly 2 or 3 months old, right? So I told her in the morning saying that, okay, please, you can take care of the business over here. I will go and I will represent you, right? And then she said, okay. And I was feeling proud that as a man, I could take care of a woman's need, and I asked her to do that. Not to know, in the evening, she came back to me and she challenged me. She's saying that why was I denied this opportunity? Then I thought, then, there's a very famous quote which rang out of me, is that your weak act of pity can be the deepest act of cruelty to somebody. Okay. So then I realized that, no, I was not supposed to take pity of her. I was supposed to give her the opportunity, right? So we devised a plan. We went to the management. We gave her an offer to carry her nanny with her. Okay. And there was a little bit of adjustment here and there. And the nanny came. She took care of the baby. And the event was fantastic. And you will not believe, she was the most productive launch of that Pan Nigeria moment. So Mina was the highest ranked, right? So the learnings from here is that you don't have to do, we don't have to pity anybody. All they want is a level playing field. If you can create a level playing field, and trust me, they can override us, and they can challenge anything, and we have seen it. When I said that our own number score, women lead men, because we have a level playing field over here. Everybody are gauged on the same matrices, and when you give that level playing ground, we have seen women doing fantastically well. Okay, so before we close, yesterday evening when I was closing late from the office. So I saw one of my women colleagues in my office. I called her because I'm going to represent them. So I wanted to hear their words also, because I can resonate them. I asked them, what do you think I should be talking to? What do you think? Surprisingly, she had nothing to tell me. Okay. So this another bias, I think this has to be addressed also, that women needs to know what they want, and they should be very constructively discontent in whatever they have, right? They are not equal. I was reading one of the articles where they say that global GDP percentage contributed by women is only 37%. Okay, when the population is 50%, why the GDP contribution of a woman is only 37? And if you see sub-Saharan Africa and some part of Asia, it is somewhere around 17%. So women's contribution to the overall economy is so low that there are some economies which are down only because of that. Okay, if we can take it up and give them the equal opportunity, 50% of them will be more than us. Here, men, I'm saying. So as women folk, we should be discontent, and we should ask for more. And as an organization, we cannot have a one fit solution for all. We should have a tailor-made solution where which we can give women equal playing opportunity for them to perform. That's all from my side. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow, Jonas, thank you so much. Thank you. This is so insightful. And really, you're right. We shouldn't pity anybody. Give them a chance to do what they need to do. If she needs to bring her nanny, let her bring her nanny. Let her get the job done, and let's stop taking it upon ourselves to decide for people what is best for them. Let's allow them to be a part of that decision making and that conversation. And I think this is part of what we're trying to do, with this webinar, where we're saying what has worked, what can we do more of, what has worked in other spaces. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I'm going to stop here because we're short for time. Thank you so much, Johannes. Ms. Sheun, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time. Yosola, thank you for bringing your unique experiences. And obviously, Jonas, thank you for closing this session with a beautiful, beautiful message for all of us. Women should ask for more. They should not be comfortable with less. Let's be bold enough to say, this is what we need to do. We need to have our voices heard. We need to be present in such spaces. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and listening to this session. And I'm going to hand it over back to Ebose. Thank you.
Thank you, Habiba. So it's now time for our Q&A. Earlier, I had asked that if you have any questions, you should please drop them in the chat box. And we would, Habiba and the panelists are still here on the call to address some of these questions. So I'll just go in there real quick and see if we have any questions. And of course, for those of us watching live on YouTube, please, you're also encouraged to ask any questions that you might have. Thank you. Okay, I can see a hand up. Peter, is that you? Do you have a question? Okay, I'll start with, we have a question in the chat box, which I would go ahead and read. Okay, so someone would like to know, a colleague would like to know, which collective approach, okay, how do we address the issue of competition rather than collaboration in the workplace? Because over time, this has led to some women viewing each other as adversaries rather than allies, leading to undermining of their collective progress. Habiba, would you want to respond to that, or Onome, or any of the panelists? Would you like me to take the question again?
Yeah, so I see Ms. Shion wants to take that question.
Okay.
Please go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, can you hear me now? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can.
I may be coming from a different angle, and I really want us as women to maybe put an end to this myth. And maybe that's why I'm choosing to speak up. I have met more women for women in the whole 30+ years of my career, right? And the office space will always have constructive tension. It will always have. I walked in one of my journeys as a CFO. Where you go into meetings, it's tough conversations, tough. You're driving, you're talking about performance, you're looking at outcomes and results. And we sometimes just need to quickly reset in our mind what truly is at the core, right? If I'm in a meeting, I want to know what's at the center of the meeting. What are we discussing about? Now, will there be other things, nuances around this? Yes. And you then need to figure out those nuances. What are they addressing? Is the person still hitting at the core of why we're here? And it's just their personality showing up, or this is truly somebody that just doesn't want to, they just have a different nuance, and then you deal with that nuance. But I really want us to see the workplace also as there will be constructive tension. And then where things are not, that they're not right, either from a value standpoint, speak up, address the person, have a quiet conversation first. And then if you still feel things aren't moving on, then you can escalate. I believe maybe other people might want to speak to maybe some other issues, but I really just want to leave this. I have seen more women for women supporting. I'm not being naive that you don't have things that could happen in the workplace, but let's all go in with that open mind and take that in an organization, there will be constructive tension. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sheon. So I had a question moving on, and it was something that struck me from what you said. So moving away from, competition between colleagues, for example, what are when the bias emanates from, like an ingrained bias within the organizational culture? So what if it is systemic and not, so just, can you speak a bit more about that?
Okay, well, yes, I listened to some of the things Miss Remy talked about, and it took me off because I've never faced that. But I want to take the learning from what she said. It's how you also systematically, fight those inbuilt biases in that organization, right? How do you, bring some of these conversations to the table? We have evolved a long way. Now there's so much focus on diversity and inclusion. there's so much, organizations that are pushing that. And I think, I think it was Jonas, when he talked about women also speaking up. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to so many things that you've done as an organization, and I'm really proud. And I think you should celebrate that as an organization. But I know it didn't start there. This has probably been a journey of baby steps. One voice becoming 2 voices, 3 voices. So I think that is how you build, that force against those kind of systemic issues. Who is that one voice that's going to pay, that's going to be the first mover voice that goes forward, right? And then how do we then collaborate together around that person to push that agenda even a little bit further, right? And I think the groundswell is in our favor as women. I mean, the groundswell is in our favor as women. So if we have organizational nuances, I think it's important that we ride on that groundswell and bring it to the table.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Habiba, I can see your hand up. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes. Just to comment, and add on what she said. And yeah, so I totally agree that, most of these things are stereotypes and just people projecting and saying, you women have a problem with yourselves and all of those sorts of things. But we also do have instances where women, like, Ms. Aisha have said, I don't want her to get the promotion. Women have spoken against other women. And I think, we need to also agree that we need to start calling ourselves out on some of these things to say we can all grow together, right? The sky is large enough for everybody to shine. We can all progress, and we need to really help ourselves, because if you look at leadership positions and board positions and C-suite positions, there's so few women, because not enough women are pushing themselves to get up there. And so I think, just to add here, that we probably have that thing where I don't know what animal does these things, where if they find something they want to gatekeep and keep hoarding and hoarding because they don't want anybody to share. But the thing is, there's so much for everybody else. There's so much space for everybody to thrive and grow. And I really want to just call on our women on this call to say, you can all shine together. You don't have to block another person from getting promoted or growing or getting to wherever it is. There's enough space for everybody to thrive. And we really need to advocate more for ourselves and push ourselves more. Thank you. Boss, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Habiba, for that comment. Rafiat, I can also see your hands up. Would you like to say something?
Yes, so I just wanted to say that I agreed with the first part, which is that I've actually seen a lot more women collaborate in the workplace, because guess what? There are also loads of men that do things against other men, but everybody will chalk it up as, oh, it's just workplace politics and all, and nobody is going to say, oh, men against men. But when it's a woman doing the toxic thing, then it becomes women against women. They're toxic people. It's not gender specific. They're bad people. They're good people. It's not gender specific. So I think that because there are fewer women in the workplace than men generally, it's easy to say, oh, these people just don't like each other. But for goodness sake, all the wars in the world right now are caused by men that are not agreeing with each other. So what are we talking about here? If it was women leaders who were the presidents of all the countries at war, they would say, oh, women can be really emotional. That's why the world is at war and blah, blah, blah. But here we are. So I think that it's not even okay. Yes, while we should call it out, and we should call out bad behavior in general as against tying it to a particular gender, because I've worked with loads of women. In TGI, I work with loads of women, and we've collaborated fantastically. We've had disagreements where we've had face-offs, we've spoken to each other, we've disagreed, we've come back and gone like, okay, let's focus on the work. We've been friendly. Some of us have gone beyond even being colleagues to being friends, even outside of the workplace. So I don't think that it's a gender thing. There are toxic people everywhere. It's not gender specific. And that's where I stand in that regard. I also wanted to say that the questions are piling. So I said you will have to select maybe 2, 3 more, and then we'll move the rest to when we have the roundtable later this month. Onome, do I have your blessing to do that?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to mention that I think Dr. Glory had her hand up as well. So maybe she wanted to add a contribution to the discussion quickly.
Okay. Dr. Glory,
yes, I
please
did.
go ahead.
Yes, just really quickly, I was going to say that I think it's really important for women networks in terms of the conversation we're having around women as collaborators versus competitors. It's really important for women networks to focus on building allyship amongst women. So show women how to be allies, show women how to collaborate. I think that's really the work of a women's network if you have one, and it can be really instrumental in creating strong bonds between women, strong networks, and having women actually know how to support each other even when there is tension. So I think that that's a key thing that women networks can foster.
Thank you very much, Dr. Glory. We'll take a couple of more questions. We have one from our viewers, or those watching us from YouTube. What skills do you think are essential for women to thrive in today's job market? And any of the panelists is free to take a shot at this if you like.
Can we please give it to Dr. Glory since she just joined back? And just to add to that question very quickly. So I think I also wanted to just get more clarity. We had this prepared before you left the call. You know, you do a lot of pushing and advancement for women that are already at executive positions, right? So they are at the top seemingly, but then you still have to keep pushing for them to be visible. What there is then to say about why that is required? Does that mean that's not even enough? Like we might get to that point, but there's still more work to be done. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. I think that's such an excellent question. I think sometimes we underestimate the impact of societal norms and cultures on women's advancements in the workplace. So I like to always share this story. You know, so I was in mid-level management, growing my career, and we had a project to deliver at work. You know, we were late in delivering. So me and my team were still at the office at midnight working on this project. And my father called me and he said, "Oh, where are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm at work." And he was like, "I don't understand. At midnight, why are you not home?" And I said, "Oh, Daddy, you know, and at this point, I was the only woman in the team, the only girl. I was the youngest leading these very older gentlemen. And my dad was like, "Why are you at this time? You are not at home. What kind of job is that? Please leave that office right now and go back home." And I said to him, I was like, "Daddy, I don't understand. I cannot leave my work and give it to delegate it when my team is, you know, right here." So, and this is my father that educated me to PhD level. So understands the need for women's advancement and women's education. Yet, when the rubber was hitting the road, he was telling me to go back home. So a lot of these things, and I mean, if I was married, it might have been my husband telling me to come back home, my children are crying and all of that. Now, a lot of these things actually impact women subconsciously, right? So you're in a society that emphasizes that women need to take care of the home, women need to be a certain way, women need to be this. And so all of that has then made us actually quite silent. It makes us to doubt our accomplishments, no matter how high you go in your career. And then we also then have a society that favors men as leaders and male stereotypes as leaders, right? So, and when a woman is now trying to be manly, you know, as we say, she's criticized, she's seen as arrogant, she's seen as all these things. And then we still have women that don't, even at that top, they don't have access to networks. How many female top leaders do we have? They don't have that groundswell of networks at that level. So women, no matter what level they are in, are actually competing against a lot. So this is why it is very important to continue to empower women with the tools to be confident, to rise at work, to be able to deal with politics, even at the boardroom level, because there are so many things that are competing against our attention in corporate spaces.
Thank you, Dr. Glory. Dr. Johannes, we have one more question that I would like to push to you to please respond to. Dr. Johannes, are you still on the call? Okay, so we have someone asking, how can I evaluate gender bias in the organization?
I would say it starts with understanding, is there an awareness in the organization? Is there an effort to even address the matter of gender bias? If there is no effort whatsoever, I think there's a higher likelihood that there is an issue, that there is a gender bias. I believe that everything starts with awareness. So if there's an active effort to create awareness, I think it's a good sign. I think the second point would be to check, are there certain structures in place? Is there an active effort to support women in making their careers? So when we speak about infrastructure, when we speak about flexibility, when we speak about being supportive of women. And I think the third one has something to do with communication also by the leadership team. It's always the top management that sets the tone for the interaction in an organization. And if you feel that from the top management level, there is a bias in the day-to-day communication, in how interviews are being conducted, in how maybe there's difference in communication during the day-to-day activities, then you can be rather sure that this is something that trickles down across the entire organization. So I think those would be some warning signs or some positive signs to look for in an organization.
Thank you very much, Johannes, for responding to that. So as that's all the questions we can take for now. We would move the other questions to the roundtable discussions, which would happen at a later time that would be communicated to everyone. So as we've gradually come to the end of this webinar, I would like to invite a representative of the Board of Women in TGI who would like to share a few words. So Tanvi Savara, if you're on the call, okay, please go ahead.
All right.
You're on mute.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ibose. So good morning and good afternoon to everyone logging in from different geographies. I hope you found the session today as insightful as I did. I'll just circle back a few years ago when the Women in TGI initiative was conceptualized and what led to the birth of that. It actually goes back many years before that when I was first formally part of the TGI ecosystem. I remember Rafiat was on the call asking her that, hey, Women's Day is around the corner. Are we, going to do anything to celebrate? So I think from there to now, where we're having our second Women in TGI webinar series, we've come a long way. And it's been a very rewarding journey. I think no journey is linear, as one of the panelists mentioned, but we have to keep ensuring that we're taking incremental steps in the right direction. I'm just going to do a bit of recap in terms of all the key highlights for me today and wanted to share with you all. Starting off with our esteemed guest speaker, Ms. Ayesha Remy. So a highly decorated career is testimony of the fact of just how trailblazing women can be across different fields. And we heard from her the importance of not only getting a seat at the table, but also creating a table of your own, through the creation of a company and different anecdotes around that. And in the panel discussion, we heard from Ms. Sharon Omi about the importance of recognizing empathy as a superpower. And Johannes highlighted the importance of all of us as leaders across different levels, crafting and being very deliberate in setting up certain corporate and business initiatives to create an inclusive and positive environment for our women across the group. And Yusola highlighted TGI's commitment to champion women across all spaces, both within the work environment and also across the grassroots levels. So, all the incredible work that she and her teams do, and a lot of our operations in the agribusiness verticals do, to actively recruit thousands of female farmers across our different value chains is testimony to this. And Jonas highlighted a very important point about allowing women to be active part in the decision making and encouraging them to voice their concerns, their opinions more freely. And I would just like to take a moment to highlight that the messaging and the syntax is very important around all of this. Of course, it all starts from the home as well. So Habiba alluded to making sure that this is an area that we champion across different environments. So the other day on Instagram, I was seeing a video by a 6-year-old, questioning her mom as to why is it man-made and mankind and not human-made and humankind. So these are some rhetorical questions for us to think deeply about in terms of ensuring how all of us can create a positive ecosystem everywhere that we operate in, and also create a nurturing environment at our homes to allow our women and daughters and sisters to grow and flourish. Um, and finally, just want to say and acknowledge 2 points. One is ensuring that we all continue to collaborate more cohesively and seamlessly, like Rafi had mentioned. So more women for women, and definitely more he for she's, as Ms. Rimi mentioned at the start of the discussion today. I want to take a moment to acknowledge, of course, all the women on a call who are all part of the TGI ecosystem as well, those of us who couldn't join us today, as well as the men and our male allies, and change champions across the TGI ecosystem. I've personally been involved in a lot of projects and initiatives with many of them who are on the call today, some who couldn't join. And, they're doing a lot of incredible work behind the scenes to ensure that we keep moving the needle in a positive direction. So, thank you.
You're mute, Mbose.
Apologies again. Thank you very much, Tanvi, for that. And now to our closing remarks from our Group Executive Director, Dr. Remioni. Sir, please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Bossen. I want to thank everybody that has been on this call today. I particularly find it very interesting. And what I like most about the way it's gone is that most of the people who spoke on this seminar didn't hide their personal experiences, and they had pleasantly used their own personal experiences to allow us into some of the things they had experienced in their career. I mean, nothing speaks better than when you learn from personal experiences that people had gone through. I think many people whom I have had personal interactions with on this call would agree that I'm probably the most qualified to pass these remarks, because I live in the midst of women. My house is entirely made up of women. All my kids are women. All their kids are women. And I'm the only man that that is in their midst. So I can relate to everything that is being said here. And I almost on a daily basis have to counsel my daughters about what they're going through in the office, and to let them know that the world is for them to conquer. I particularly like the ring that the conclusions at the end of this conversation came out with, which is the fact that women should emphasize more on what they are able to do for themselves and forget about the fact that there are other women out there laying ambushes for them. You really cannot hide a golden person. If you're good, if you are made of strong substances, if your abilities shine over and above most of the people that are around you, they can only delay things. You would definitely shine over and above anybody that is competing with you. And to be honest, competition is meant to happen in an office environment. If you left your family to come and work with people, naturally you've thrown yourself into the fray, and people would naturally compete with you, and nobody's going to give you anything because you simply showed up. So I want to encourage all the women here, ignore the men and just show what you're made of. And when I say ignore, I'm not saying be rude. All I'm saying is that Yes, they will compete with you, but if you are that good, you would shine, and you would shine over and above. It's unfortunate that our keynote speaker has left us. No doubt, the way she was introduced was reflected in the way she delivered her speech to us. The eloquence was not in doubt. The experiences were rich, they were relevant, and they were succinctly used to point us to what we should take as examples to learn from. A ditto for the people who are on the panel. The panelists all had very, very relevant experiences that I dare say would be extremely useful for all the women and even those of us men that are still pursuing one career or the other on this call. I am rounding this up on a note that women should please understand why this seminar is being put together for us. It is not for us to begin to fight all the men that are on the corridors of the company. It's not for us to begin to be rude to people, but it's to let us know that TGI Group takes particular interest in making sure that the women in our midst are able to rise to the top of their career. Like many of the speakers had alluded to, the statistics are demonstrating that things are indeed getting better, maybe not as quickly as some of the gladiators would want it, but definitely we're pointing towards the right direction. And if this initiative is sustained and kept alive, we will definitely get there in due time. I thank you all for the attention, for the detailed listening, and even for the robust questioning that happened after the speakers delivered their speeches. I wish you all a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And to all those who joined in, we've clearly shown a commitment to supporting women, particularly across TGI Group. And it is only through gatherings like this that we can learn from each other and forge and take actionable steps. And with that, we've come to the end of today's event. Please look out for a short survey that will be circulated after this event. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.